Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title, it is another movie review. Today's review is a film that, from the get go, I knew I had to see in theaters. From the moment I saw the trailer, from the moment I saw the coming soon advertisements, I'm like, this is definitely a film to see for the first time in the theaters. I know the saying goes you can watch a good film anywhere, but with certain films, you always want to see it the first time in the theater. And 1917 is definitely one of those, just from the cinematography standpoint alone. And I can honestly say it was a film experience worth the price of admission. Written and directed by Sam Mendes of Road to Perdition, American Beauty, and Skyfall fame, it is loosely inspired by reminiscences of one of his grandfathers who fought in World War One, and you definitely get the authenticity from those stories in this film, because this film really does capture the hell that the soldiers went through in the trenches. From trekking across no man's land to going through a seemingly abandoned city to even going up to a seemingly ordinary yet abandoned farmhouse. The entire time you're like, all right, is it going to be enemies there? Is it going to be enemies there? A couple times there are. Other times it's like, are those enemy planes or are those their planes? Oh, they're planes. And of course, since this is the first war where planes were used, since they were still relatively new, you really do get the threat of that little chestnut thrown in pretty well. And then, of course, the ending part where we get that climactic battle scene that we see parts of in the trailer, where we see one of the main characters running away. You see some artillery bombardments, soldiers running the opposite way. Really does capture the war without seeing too much. The only way you could really capture more is if you did a big, elaborate battle where you would just see people going all over. Even the medical triage scene captures it. And this is where the cinematography gimmick comes into play wonderfully. And that is, like Hitchcock's Rope, it is all shown from one camera angle. Like Hitchcock's Rope, the film is shot in one seemingly continuous take. Obviously, it's not one take. That would have been way too long to do, but the camera never cuts in the traditional sense. It'll shift. It'll be following our two main characters for a while, then it will shift to show something that is around them that it should be important to the audience, to show the surroundings and cut back around to them. And it gives the audience a great insight into where they are, where they're going, and what's around them. But it also is the closest that the medium of cinema can get to a first-person perspective, a la first-person novel, without it literally being the camera being the eyes of the main character, a la found footage films or Hardcore Henry. And what came to mind when I was watching this film was how George R. R. Martin writes his first-person perspectives, where everything we know in that scene is stuff that the character is either commenting on or history that they can reminisce about. One scene that comes to mind as an example of this for the film's perspective is when one of the characters is at the camp near the end and he's looking for the lieutenant character, played off, funny enough, by Richard Marsden of Game of Thrones fame. You know, got to be a little connection there. He is walking around looking for him, and the camera cuts away from him as he's looking and goes through the medical triage, and you see all the bodies laying around. You see some guy with a leg blown off, another one with part of his cab missing, the medical doctors going around calling to one another. If this was written in a novel form, that scene would be him looking around, but him making notes and commenting on what he sees, the horror of it all. And the way that the camera cuts around and comes back, it illuminates that point beautifully. And even though it's an expensive gimmick to do from a cinematography standpoint, I would love to see films do stuff like that more often. Even if it's not done for the entire film, like certain scenes, like cut away from the actors, go around, then come back to them. Like, as long as it's not an important dialogue scene. And it's because of how wonderfully Roger Deakins, the cinematographer, did this. I can honestly say I'm happy it won Best Cinematography at the Oscars, well-deservedly so. Deakins also did the cinematography for Blade Runner 2049, a film that I love, that I hate that flopped. So he does have he is a great cinematographer. I'd probably put him in my top 10 if I were to do a list. It also won visual effects and sound mixing. It's definitely a film that, even if it gets some of the bigger nominations like Best Picture, you don't see it winning that one, but you see it winning a lot of the technical ones. So I can applaud the Academy for giving it the technical ones. The visual effects one, I know some people are arguing about. Some people think Irishman should have won it. Some people think Avengers should have won it. Just from the subtlety of it, I could see why this one won it. Because there are moments where you could tell that they are on a set that was probably added onto. Other ones, they probably had stuff that they filmed separately and then used CGI to integrate it into it to make it seem like it's flawlessly in one shot. Because of how complex some of the moments in this film are, especially near the end where we have the main character running while there's artillery in the background, there's no way that they did that all live on the set. There's just too many variables. They want to do the main part and then integrate them. Set in the spring of 1917, the plot involves two young enlisted soldiers in the British Army who are given a mission of utmost importance. They are tasked by the general to go across no man's land, go through the countryside to find an isolated regiment and deliver a message to its commanding officer, Colonel Mackenzie, played by Benedict Cumberbatch in one scene near the end. The message is they need to withdraw their attack immediately, because the Germans, that the regiment that those two enlisted men were fighting, has pulled back. And the way they're pulling back, it makes it look like they're retreating, but they're actually not retreating. They're withdrawing to join a larger force, and if the force Mackenzie is commanding attack, it will be a massacre. So the general wants them to deliver the message to save lives. And to add to this, that particular regiment is also where the brother of one of the characters is. So you get that little other caveat that not only do they have to save a bunch of lives, but for one of them it's personal because he has to save his older brother's life. And if he doesn't, like if they save the regiment but the brother dies because of their speed, you got that little moral chestnut hanging over him that he'll probably blame himself for. And the film is essentially them getting from point A to point B, and it's set in World War I. They go through no man's land, they go through the countryside, they see an aerial battle, one of them has to go through a city at nighttime where the Germans are stationed, and he's running, has to go through water, eventually finds the regiment, and of course this is where we get a beautiful singing moment, and it's the prelude to the battle. It's not super big and bombastic, but it's enough. Sam Mendes did a great job as the writer-director. He got excellent performances out of his actors. He worked hand in hand with the cinematographer to make the film look good. And as a writer, perfectly crafted the film. Definitely made it feel like it was in World War I. Since it's based off his grandfather's reminiscences, you could tell there's a nostalgic attachment to it. And he brought it to life perfectly. I actually do want to research more of the films he's done. I haven't seen either of his Bond films. I know Spectre wasn't as well received as Skyfall. But it just seems like they do a good one, go down a little, go down a little. Road to Perdition I've been meaning to watch. American Beauty is a film I've heard of. I know that people were comparing other films and other genres to it. Like, this is the American Beauty of this genre. So it's the one I definitely want to watch to see what all the hullabaloo is about. But I definitely will keep an eye on Mendes and watch some of his future work. Dean Charles Chapman and George McKay play our main characters, and they do a pretty good job. You definitely believe them as war buddies from their back and forth and the chemistry between them. And you definitely buy that they've been through hell, especially McKay, since he's a little bit more jaded in the beginning. He kind of softens a little bit by the end, but you can definitely tell from his behavior that what he's seen, even if he doesn't come out and say it, it has jaded him to the point where he's like, there's no glory in all this. I don't care about medals. I just want to survive and get home. Which, if you know anything about war through the ages, especially as the 20th century was beginning here with the horrors that this war unleashed. I mean, it was called the war to end all wars. Even without saying it, you know what he's been through and you can believe how he's become. And you also wonder, why isn't he worse than he actually is right now? Not even from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. Has he suffered PTSD? Is he going to approach it? It's one of those unsaid questions, but if you know anything about history, you kind of wonder it in the background. Funny thing about Chapman's casting in this film is that the actor that plays his older brother, Madden, is also a fellow Game of Thrones Illuminati, because Chapman played Tommen Baratheon in the later seasons, and Madden played the character that would have been his brother-in-law, Robb Stark. So they go from playing potential brothers-in-law to playing actual brothers, even though they don't share a scene together. When I found that out, I'm like, that's kind of funny. Other actors in the film, you got Mark Strong in there as a British officer, you got Colin Firth in there as a general, and like I said, you got Benedict Cumberbatch in there as a colonel. They all do a pretty good job. All the other actors do pretty good jobs as well. Just those three are the three big actors in there, and then you got the other ones that are a couple tiers below that are still starting out. So nice little sprinkling of actors throughout the film, and some might say it's a little distracting, but I think it actually adds to the world because they all have their own little personalities and their own little way they carry themselves. And as mid to high ranking officers, you need something like that, and it works, especially Cumberbatch's Mackenzie, because of some of the things that they talked about beforehand. And when he appeared on screen, I'm like, okay, so this is what they were warning him about. Good thing they were witnesses. In conclusion, 1917 is a great, well-made film. You can tell a lot of love and care went into the making of this film, just from the staging of the actors alone. From what I read on IMDb, it took months just to run through how they want to have the film shot before they even shot a single frame. And the results on screen speak for themselves. The actors, cinematography, the score, the lighting, the costume design. All the elements of mise-en-scène come together and blend beautifully. As if my tone hasn't stated it already, this is definitely one of those films that comes with my high recommendation. If you are not a fan of war movies, I'd say put that to the side and give it at least one watch. It might end up surprising you.